A corrupt chemical company owner mismanages toxic waste that turns the dead into the undead. Sound cool? So I'm here to talk about Revenge of the Living Dead Girls from 1987. So this French film was directed by Pierre B. Reinhard, a director whose work goes way back to the late 70s. He's got like a ton of directing credits, but nothing else that I was familiar with at all, and most of it looks like low-budget stuff, and I respect that. And it stars John Philip Berger, Jean-Claude Roy, and Edgar Wallace. Basically, I wasn't familiar with anyone involved here at all, and I really don't know much at all about late 80s French films, to be honest. That said, I had an okay time with this one, and I have some thoughts. I mean, the storyline here is very simple. You have a sleazy guy who runs some kind of chemical company, doesn't really go into detail what it is. And when I say sleazy, he's pretty much sleazy in every way possible. I mean, he's an unethical asshole who only cares about money and banging every woman within reaching distance. And it all pretty much works for him until he makes a series of mistakes. Beginning with dumping his company's toxic waste, like anywhere he can, illegally of course, to save some money. So he has some dumped, it's like a milk tanker truck, which is driving on the freeway, which makes zero sense and is just plainly a stupid idea, but I digress. This leads to several local deaths, but when he has some more waste dumped in a nearby graveyard, which also makes no sense, the 3 recently deceased women turn into zombies. And I kind of feel like this movie was most likely heavily inspired by Return of the Living Dead just, 2 years prior. And as I made pretty clear, the storyline here is very straightforward. The chemical company guy also gets blackmailed by a few women in a kind of funny scene, actually. They plan to take pictures of him appearing to be like committing sexual acts with one of the women after he passes out. And as they're like scheming, one of the women asks the other woman what positions, she should do for the pictures. And she says something along the lines of like anything you're familiar with. And the other girl goes like the Cambodian wheelbarrow. And I actually had to look that one up. So yeah, basically we end up getting a zombie movie with 3 zombies. Yeah, just 3. I mean, most zombie movies are scary because zombies usually come in very large numbers. There being only 3 just doesn't seem all that threatening. I mean, I guess they're a bit smarter than most zombies in, most movie zombies. Like they can use weapons and even drive cars, which they do. Now, one of the first things I noticed while watching this was how much this felt like an Italian film. I mean, I knew it was a French film, but I actually had to double check because it was so Italian feeling to me. Had to have been inspired, no doubt about that. And it looks quite low budget, and most of the acting is pretty amateur, but sufficient enough. I actually thought that the editing and cinematography was pretty decent, despite, reusing certain footage, another Italian movie trope. This movie doesn't look too bad, really, all things considered. And at this point, you might be thinking about whether or not you will give this a watch, because I likely haven't convinced you yet. And I would only really recommend this to fans of, like extreme gore, because there is some fairly extreme gore here. There aren't like a ton of kills, but there's enough, and they mostly come with some decent looking gore. The worst offender being the scene where the zombies bite off this one dude's dick. It's pretty gnarly. There's also a really gross shower scene later on, but I'll leave that one for you to figure out. So I'm giving The Living Dead Girls a 5 out of 10. I'd really only recommend this again to fans of, extreme gore, old Italian films, especially like the Fulci stuff. Everyone else, you easily can skip this. And for me, I mean, I only really liked the gore. There wasn't really anything else in this movie that I necessarily loved. I mean, most of the plot just doesn't make sense, but at least it does kind of pull off what it was trying to do. Cheers, guys.